Welcome back. Thanks for joining me. We're working on this vector illustration based on a coloring book page, and I've got this one to the point where the black line layer, all of the line art from the main subject of this illustration is drawn. It was all based on this template, which is invisible until I make it show up again. So I utilized the line art from the foreground subject. I didn't draw this monkey yet, but maybe I'll do that later on. What I'm going to focus on right now is creating what's kind of like the coloring book activity of this assignment. So here we go. I'm going to lock the black line layer right there. And at this point, I'm about ready to create a brand new layer. Hitting the plus, create new layer. And what we've got now is a brand new layer. This one I'm going to call the color layer. And I think I'll actually drag it underneath the black line layer. In fact, that's a very important part of this. So we've got all the line art on top. Color is underneath. Now that I have my layers set up, it's time to start using some tools. And we're going to work on this as if we're coloring in the page. What you could do is start some shapes with, say, the pen tool. And let's see, I'm going to go get a dark brown. I'm not going to be working with a stroke this time. But here we are. And right now I'm trying to replicate and work inside of the line art that I have. And this might be a great way to get some of this project done. As long as you made heavy enough lines, you can probably manipulate your pen tool so that you can stay inside. And you might figure out, some tricks and techniques to make your shape work the way you want to. Let's see how long it takes me to replicate this piece of hair just with the pen tool. I guess you could use the curvature tool if you want to. I'm going to have to think about how I'm working around the thumb here. And I know something that I can do in the near future that will make it so it's not too much of a problem for me. If I go outside of the lines, it's not going to be an issue because I'll show you a great way to deal with it. And if my path isn't totally congruent with the path of the shape in the black lines layer, it's not going to be an issue either. So let's go look at what we have. I do have a couple of places where I'll probably have to edit and change some things. Specifically, like right there, maybe some other places. But I think I did an okay job. If I need to go edit, I can go use my direct selection tool, make sure some of those anchor points are in a safe place. But there are some other ways that I'm going to be able to work on this. Maybe I need to add an extra anchor point and make sure it's safely. Oh yeah, definitely will have to go fix something here. All right, so that's one way to work on this. And we can see that, yeah, I can turn on and off the color layer. I can turn on and off the line art layer. But we're going to do something that might come a little more natural to you. So here goes. Still in the color layer, we can try out a different tool. All right, we're going to go look at the paintbrush tool. And I already showed you that you probably don't want to color things in with the paintbrush tool because it's really just a bunch of paths with fat strokes, and things like this can happen to it. And yeah, it's not great. It's considered sloppy. So we're going to try a different tool here. It's actually underneath the paintbrush tool, and it's called the Blob brush tool. So you can see the icon for the Blob brush tool looks a little bit different than the paintbrush tool. We can go manipulate some factors that we're working with on the blob brush. It'll help you to first select whatever color you want the inside of your brush to end up as, except we're selecting that as the stroke color. I'm going to start making a shape, and I can go and, do my best to stay inside my lines. And it won't take very long here. If I miss something, I can go back over it and add to it. I'm even going to skip part of that. Okay. So what we created, instead of having a whole bunch of paths with a fat stroke, is actually our own new shape defined on the outside by a path. And this also has a path on the inside. What we made here, we will call a compound path. And you've probably seen a compound path before. One of the great things about a compound path is we can go edit. All right, we're going to go look at and select just the inside part of this compound path, and I'm going to hit delete. And took 2 times on delete to make it happen. And what we have is a single solitary shape defined on the outside by a path now. Probably not even a compound path anymore, technically. If I needed to, I could go release it as a compound path. And it's just a straight up path now. Great thing about this is, just like the other one, we can go and start to edit things. If I need to fill up some more space up here, I can go grab one of these anchor points probably and drag it around to make it work. Maybe I just need to subtract one of those. Pretty cool. Another cool thing about the blob brush is, if I have something selected that I created with the blob brush, I should be able to go and merge my next blob with the previous blob that I made. So making sure that this is selected, hitting OK, and I'm going to continue drawing part of this blob brush shape, and let's see if it worked. Yep, it did. So I just added a little bit to that blob. I can go in, and it's probably time to start doing the next thing. We're going to start using tool. Right now it's directly below the blob brush tool, and it's the eraser. If you've started to use the eraser tool in Illustrator, you probably realize it doesn't work like an eraser in a pixel drawing program. The eraser in Illustrator really just edits and changes a path. So you can see that this path that's selected right now, I can take little bites out of it. It's not great for editing things where you need a stroke, or you need your stroke to look a certain way. So I'm using that eraser to go and fix a couple of things. I'm probably going to go around and continue to use my direct selection arrow, or minus a couple of anchor points, to get things to look just right. Let's see, what can I use here? I'm just going to subtract that point. Yep, that looks pretty good. Of course, this looks like a job for adding to this with the blob brush. I have that shape selected. I'm just going to continue right there. Hey, that looks good. And since I'm working underneath the black line layer, all of that line art is kind of helping me out. So there I go. I got a pretty nice skin tone there. Let's see, some other things that might work for you. I'm going to go lock this and look inside, look at a couple of things that I did inside the black line layer. So you might go and take things that you've already made in your line art layer and do some fun stuff with it. So you can see right now, I already made a couple of little reflections that are inside a group of these eyes inside the line layer. I already made some other eye details, and even behind that. So that's something you could think about doing with that to add to your realism or add to the detail. And in fact, if you did that, I might even consider doing something like, probably have to have those. Might even consider doing something like selecting some of those details you made, make a new sub layer. Nice. So I might even go do a thing like have both of those selected and collect in a new layer. There it is. That layer is called eye details. So between using some of the tools you already know and starting to play around with the blob brush, hopefully you have enough tools in your tool belt. You can start filling in all of the colored shapes behind your line art layer to start to colorize your coloring book page. Thanks for listening.